Hello, I'm Ruth from Get Quilts Done, and I finally am here applying the binding. So I showed how to finish a quilt to prepare for binding, how to make the bias strips, and now we're at the good part. This is actually going to be two parts because this method means that you first apply it by machine and then you do it by hand. So it's rather a lot of work, but I consider it a labor of love, and I hope you do. This is a quilt that I first started streamlining, but it's a method I've been using for years, and this is what it's going to look like when it's done. I really like the clean finish. It's done by hand, and I just like the way it looks. When I was done with this, I swore that I would not do a queen size quilt using this method, but now there's a few years that have gone by, and I definitely would do it again because I like the way it looks. So it was worth the extra effort. I wouldn't recommend using this for a children's quilt or a quilt that's going to be snuggled up with a lot. And the reason is it doesn't have the durability of binding that's made totally by machine. Okay, so let's get started and let's apply it. Of course, we start out looking at the sewing machine, what's going on. It's the 9mm stitch plate that I want. It's the 34D foot, and the dual feed bar is engaged. That's also really important to check that's going on. Here we go at the computer or at the sewing machine screen. I keep on calling it a computer screen. So of course, what I look at to make sure that I have everything set up as far as security goes is the 9mm, and that is correct. Okay, so that is important. Then we have security. All right, then I'm going to get into the hover foot because I change it depending on what I'm doing. So if I'm going to go in and just make sure it's correct. So the hover foot is right in here. We're going deep down inside. Actually, we're not. We're just pressing a bunch of buttons. So this is where the needle is down, and that's because when the needle goes down and you stop, that's when the hover foot either goes up slightly or all the way. And I want it, even though I love the hover foot, for our purposes today when I'm doing straight stitches, I keep the hover foot so it's not active, and that's really important. The other thing that I like to do is how I cut things off. So when I'm sewing in a straight line and I want to press the scissors and cut it off, I want it to knot, and I want 4 little stitches. So that's set up. Now let's get to the sewing. I am going to the quilting section, and the foot that, or not the foot, I'm sorry, the stitch that I'm going to use the most is the 1325. And as you can see, it's already set up. Oh, and I forgot about the foot. We're using the 34D foot. I press that. It gives a little bit explanation about what it is, and then I get out, and because I don't have the upgrade yet, it's still on 1D. So going back to the 1325, you can see what's highlighted in yellow. I use the needle 4 over. If I zero it out, let me get this. Oops. If I go to 0, it's just in the center. I press CLR and it goes back because I've already set it up. As you know, I go in here, and if I want to get rid of it, I just go like that, but I don't. I want it 4, and I'll show you how I got to 4 because I'm looking for a perfect 1/4 inch seam, and I need to use the side of the foot to measure it. So I press on the memory, and it's there. And the reason why I'm using, let me get out of this, the reason why I'm using this stitch is it's a little longer because when I'm sewing on the binding, I'm actually quilting it on. It's going through all the layers that I've put together so far, or basically that everybody does to make it to a quilt. And so you want the stitch length to be a little longer, and that's why I'm using it. The other thing that I will show you is that when I'm piecing the last part of the binding together, I will be using the 1326, which is a shorter stitch because I'm piecing things, but I'm not going to change everything over to have the 97D foot just for one little seam. So I'm leaving it in, and I have it pre-set up on the number 4 uh, placement for the needle to the right. So let's say the needle goes to the right, and just like the picture shows, see? And I've already set it up there, so if I put in clear, and this way if I stop and start the machine, the binding, or I go backwards and forwards, I know it's already set up for me, and I know that I'm going to use it, and I don't have to make any big changes. So there it is. The machine is set up. Let me switch it back to 1325 because that's what I'm going to be using. I'm only going to be using the other one for a little bit of time. And we are now good to go. I'm ready to get going and start to sew. So before I even begin to sew, I do want to show you how this ideal seam gauge, I think it's gauge, works. It's a really important tool to have because we have so much flexibility with these 9mm machines. We should use them to their fullest. And this is a really big help for us. So if you see, we have the 1/8 inch, and we have the 1/4 a scant inch, and we have the 1/4 inch, and I'm using today the 1/4 and the 3/8 simultaneously. And the 1/4 inch, the difference is it includes the actual seam, the thread in the seam, where the 1/4 is the 1/4 from the seam to the end. And that's what I'm using for today. And I have a white piece of paper so you can see it better. Of course, normally I don't have that, so you can see what happens when I take it out. Okay, so I put up the foot, okay, and what I did is I experimented going to the right of the needle. I knew it wasn't going to be 1 or 2. I started with 3, and then eventually I got to 4. And what I do is that I put it down and I lined it up pretty much, and very slowly I got the 1/4 inch in there, okay, right there. And it's very hard to see like this. Let me get it closer. Okay, so we get it closer. There it is, the 1/4 inch, and I lined it up. I started with the 3, and it wasn't close enough, and I got to the 4. And it's kind of hard to do, especially because usually I have a magnifying glass that really helps, but I don't today because it would be something else in front of me along with the camera. So then I put the foot down. Okay, and I very carefully, because I don't want to break the needle or anything, I turned it. Okay, so here I am on 4. It's pretty much flush with this side, and that's how I got it. So I'm using more of the 9mm inside. So I want something to measure up the side of the binding, so I put it in there. Now, here came the next part that was really important. I was done with that. Let me clear it out. And I wanted to see if the 3/8, and I experimented with it, if the 3/8 was the right size. So I put in the needle there. Do you see how the needle goes in? And it's perfect. So I don't have any way of measuring and getting that exactly right on its own. So I do have this wonderful gauge that came with the 97D foot that I am pretty sure you can buy on your own, on its own, but I would always recommend, if your machine didn't come with a 97D foot, to definitely get it. And I put this up flush against it. You see right there? Now there's other gauges around that work fairly well, and you can use them, but this is my favorite one because it doesn't use, it's not sticky, it can't be moved around, and I just move it very carefully. You don't have to force it, very lightly, and I screw it in, and there it is. So then I'm going to have 2 places to measure how I sew. All right, here I go. As you can see, I am beginning, and I put a pin in at 10 inches from this corner right here because I'm going to need that in order to finish it off. And I start rather towards the edge, not exactly on the edge, but towards the edge, because I'm going to need 12 inches before I stop when I'm on the last side in order to finish it off correctly. And you'll see when I get there why. So I'm lining it up right here, okay? And that's just about the only pin I'm going to use. And what I want you to see is how I'm lining it up. So hopefully I can get this a little bit closer that you can see what's the process. Remember I said that I had measured it to be 4 across, and that blue is going to be lined up with that. So let me get it up a little bit. Let me raise this a little bit. Okay. All right, so it's raised up just a bit, and this is flush. The bottom, the quilt, is going to be flush against the gauge, and this, the actual binding, that's what it's all about, is going to be lined up flush against the foot, okay? And that's how it's going to work. Now, this is binding, and if it's too tight, I'm going to stretch it a little bit. If it's too tight, it will curl. But if it's too big, it'll be wavy. So we don't want anyone in either one of these. And it's just a slight pull when you're sewing, okay? Just a slight pull. I do go forwards and backwards. It's about 10. I'm not worried about doing a little bit too much. When I begin, I go a little bit forward and a little bit backwards. So let's begin. And let me get, I actually am sewing with, not only without my magnifying glass, without my glasses. So let's get back to that. And here we go. Okay, so it's very easy. It's the only pin I'm going to have. And see how the needle's down? All right, and then I just take out the pin because I don't want to have more pins than I need. And now I'm just slightly pulling it and I'm going along, and let me get it out a little bit. Okay. And I usually go a lot faster, but when I'm doing it with the camera and without the magnifying glass and things like that, it's going to go, you know, when it's going to go a bit slower. All right. So I get to the end, and this is really important because you can see I'm getting to the end, and I measure. I have my little measuring tool. I keep it about 1/4 of an inch. Okay. And it's really important that lines up, and I'll just show you just in a bit. Right at the edge of the quilt here, this bottom part, okay? So I measure, I just keep on going, and like I said, I go slow, and this is a beautiful thing. Goes one pass, that's about right. I backtrack it. I put on the back button, and then I press the little scissors, and the first part is done. So here you go. You want to fold it all the way to the side, and it's supposed to be at an angle. Then you fold it over on top, and you have about 1/8 of an inch on the top and on the side that shows up. And you can feel, if it's done right, you can feel an angle of fold underneath. Okay, now I use a clip instead of a pin because I feel that it distorts things less. But you could also use a pin. I prefer to use a clip. I have to pull the clip all the way to the side or above because my foot is a wide foot. So you want to make sure that your foot doesn't do it. Now I turn it around. It's already, even a small quilt like this, it's already, you have to kind of push and pull it. And you have to finagle it in. I think that's the right word, to make it sure it works right. And you can see I'm using my finger and I'm trying to make a sign. So like you could use a tool, a boning tool or something so you can see it, because that's going to show you where you're going to start. You can kind of see it It's probably not dark enough. I'm going to try using a tool, and if that doesn't work, I'll use a marker. Let's see. Okay, so I have the little wooden thing, and I can see that's not going to be good enough for me to see, especially because I'm not using a magnifying glass. So let me get out my little purple tool and see what happens. And if that doesn't work, I'll probably use a soap, piece of soap that I have. So I just rub it against it. There it goes. Nope, that doesn't give me enough vision. I should have just started with the soap. There you go. Okay, so I just rub it against where I can feel the fold. It kind of stops it. I press against it, and then I start. And I start to really try to finagle it in. The gauge is in the same place, and the needle is to the right in 4 position. It's the same way, and you just kind of play with it and take out the clip whenever you're ready. Okay, it's not. It seems like a lot of work to arrange it, mostly because I have a camera in front of me. Really, I can get it going pretty well. So the line signifies where you're going to start, and I move forward a bit, and then I backtrack, and then I move forward again. And you want to go slightly over the line. So you're going to trap that fold when you sew, and when I turn it around and I open it up, you'll see how this works. Okay, it's kind of hard to explain, so I hope that you experiment a few times before you really get the hang of it. Once you do, you can eyeball it and you'll understand what works. So you can see I'm finagling it and I'm playing with it, but it will work in the end. Okay, so let's get it going. And I'm using the same rules that I have, that the binding is flush against the foot and the quilt is flush against the gauge. Okay, so let's get going, and it'll start with a few starting stitches in place, and then we'll go forward. I'll count 1, 2, 3, I believe, and then I backtrack 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, and then it should go an extra one over when I start. It probably will, and there it goes. Yep, it went back, and there we go, and we're off. Okay, so I'm going to sew along, and I'm going to stop in the middle to show you, and then I'll go on and do the rest of it. Of course, I am sewing quite a bit slower because I don't have usually the quilt and, like in front of me, a camera. Okay, so here you go, and I'm going to show you a little bit better how that works. But you could see it turns over, it's nice and flat. You could see the extra lines, and I'll pull up the fabric so you can see when I fold it, it'll go slightly over it. So let me get it into the camera so you can see it, and there it is. It's right in the camera, and you are going to hand sew it right over that. And look at how nice and flat it looks. Okay, so that's working really right. And then I'm going to show you how you work the corner. And the corner is really an amazing thing. It took me a while to learn how to do this. I'm really glad to share it with you. Okay, so I'm going to turn it over, and of course I'll do a better job showing it to you when I get to that, but right now I'm just making sure it works. Okay, so the top one, the side that's on top, that's the side that you want to do on the bottom, on the other side, on the bottom. So like here it is to the right, that is on the top, that fold that's on top. You want to fold it that side first. So there you go. And it's kind of counterintuitive, at least it was for me, but it does work. Okay, so now we're just going in, and we're good to go now. All right, I'm on the last row, and it's really important that I get this part right, otherwise it'll be a lot more work to finish it off. So what's this part? I have this little gizmo that I'll show you when I'm ready that I use, and it says to, and it has little instructions on it, and I just have some tape on it here. The reason why I have the tape on it is I can find it. Okay, I'm gonna put something else on here too, so I could even more, so I can find it, because this thing is totally clear, which it needs to be. Okay, but it's important to have a 12-inch opening when I use this, and if I put some white paper, you'll be able to see it better. I will at the end, but it says to leave a 12-inch opening, and so that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to mark a 12-inch opening for it to work exactly right. So I take my measuring tape and I just hold it down right there. Okay, and I mark it. Okay. And I double check it, because otherwise it won't match up right, to make sure it's 12. So a little star. Let's get it. Yes, it's perfect. Okay, see how it's 12 and 12? Okay, so I am going to be doing the last part now. Okay, and everything else stays the same. Okay, what I've been doing before, I'm just going to do again. I'm coming to the edge right now, and that means you're going to see that faint little white line, soap line, and that's where I'm going to backtrack. See, it's right there. You can hardly see it. Let's get in really close so you can see it coming up. So you should be able to, let me get it when it comes up. Okay, in the view, you can is it in the view yet? It is right there. You could hardly see it, but it is right there. So there's a little white line that's kind of hard to see in the camera. And what you're going to do with that is you're going to line up that white line that's hard to see with the red line of the foot, so everything is matching up. So if you could hardly see it, there it is. If I could just barely show it to you. Okay, so let me get this. Here it is. You could hardly see it. It's a white line. This is the red line of the foot that's matching up, and of course the gauge is matching this side, and the foot, the clear foot, is matching up on this side. And then I just press the button. You want to back stitch it, because you want these stitches locked in, because you're going to be manipulating and moving things around quite a bit. So you want it to be locked in. So you just stitch backwards a few times, press the cut, and there you go. So right now we have to close up the binding. And I've been using a tool that's called the binding tool. It took me a while. I made a few mistakes, so I thought I'd show it to you. I have a piece of paper behind it so you can see it. I will leave a link to it. It's one of the many methods. I really like using it. It really makes a big difference. And like I said, I did put a sticker on this side, and I am going to put another sticker here. It's clear, that's what it has to be, but I just can't find it. So I put on markings in order to solve that problem. Okay, so we start with A. Okay, there's A or B. There's the line. Okay, so we I snuggle it up. I don't push too hard, but I do snuggle it up to where I stopped sewing here on this side, and then I make a marking, and you can see, like, I'm putting it right here in the middle. There's a black line that you hardly see because it's so clear, but there is a black line, and I use my soap that I use, okay, and I just go right along, smudge it along, just like that, and there it is. There's the line. It's matching up beautifully, and then I take it out, and I now cut it, and this is what's really important because it's done two different ways, okay? So, and because this line is kind of thick, because the soap is, I snuggle this up, and you know that you're doing it right if the writing is right side up. Not like here, you can read the writing. Here, I'll put the paper behind it. You could read the writing. It's going this way. If you're like this, then you know you're going the wrong way. Okay, so I snuggle this up. I put it up. I open up the binding, okay? And then I just trim it, and I make sure everything's out of the way, and I know it's kind of uncomfortable, okay? And if you're doing less than 2.5 inches, then you want to move it so this side is down. See where the little cutoff is, and you want to make sure that you cut that little corner off too. So I'm just going to take it, and since it's thick, the part that is closest to the quilt is where I line it up. Okay, so let me get this lined up, and I just do what we do. I trim it. Okay, it gets a little hard with the camera in front of me, but you do want to cut off that little pointy thing, and I don't know why I'm worrying about cutting off extra stuff, because it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if this part gets bunched up. Okay, so we have one side, okay? Now we want to do the other side, and I make sure I close this so I don't have any accidents. I make sure this was open. I make sure I close it. Okay, now this was like this, so we turned it around, okay? And you do the same thing. Make sure the writing's up, and you butt it up, not too tight, okay? Just firmly, okay? And that line right now is right there, okay? And you mark it the same way, okay? So now that's marked. Now you keep it the same direction so you don't get it mixed up. It's gonna, to make sure it's right, you can land it, or see how this is going like that, even while it's closed or open, it'll go the other direction. It'll make sense that it lines up, okay? So you take this and open it up the same way, but this time you are lining up the whole thing differently. So you are lining up, that's where I got the mistake one time. I don't want to do that mistake again. So you're lining it up like that. It's going to be like that. So I take that line and I line it up. I make a straight line out of that so it goes all the way, because you'll see you have to line the tip. See how you have to line the tip up? And I have made this mistake the first time I got it going, of course. Okay, there it is. Okay, see, now it's hard to see, but I am going to see if I can get it close up. Okay, and move it so you can see it close up, because it's so important. The other one, the other way, we marked it like this, okay? See how the black line, let me move it around so you can get in the whole thing in the camera. The black line was on the white line, but this one, it's the other side, yeah, is going to be quite a bit shorter, and it's going to go right there. So you're going to line up that tip instead, okay? And it will make sense. If you put it here, you can see it will work. Kind of imagine it, okay? So that's how you're doing it. That's what's so important. And that's the mistake that I made once. And I had to cut out part of it, add on more. And yeah, there was a lot of fixing to do when I did one. So I thought I would show it to you to make sure we do it the right way, okay? So let me get it out a little bit. And there we go. So we're out so you can see it. And yeah, and I'm going to have to move this around so I can cut it and you can see it. It's not a big deal. We don't, probably by this stage when you're doing the binding, you probably do know how, but I want to make sure that this is right. This is going the right way. Okay. It's turned over. It doesn't want to be in front of the camera. Okay, so it's a little bit of an issue. Okay, so this time I'm going to cut this line first because it got in the way. Okay, not a big deal. All right, and hopefully I didn't make a mistake. And you can see it's going to line up. Okay. Now, you know what to do now. We take some pins. I am going to say that we're going to need pins, okay? And you can see, you just line it up like that. See how clumsy it is? Another time, a lot of times when we're doing things with binding or getting things to work right, they feel kind of clumsy. See how it adds up? See the corner? How it fits on correctly? I'm just going to take it over the machine, sew it, and you can see it'll be on a diagonal so you could hardly see the seam. I do use pins before I take it over there because I don't want to have to do it again and line everything up. And I'm not worried about a 1/4 inch seam, scant 1/4 inch seam. I'm just doing a regular 1/4 inch seam. My machine is changing to my piecing stitch. Okay. And in my machine, and that's not a big deal. We all know the piecing stitch, what it looks like. So let's get it going over there. So here I go. I'm just sewing this last bit by machine. I do back stitch. Okay, and when I can lay it out flatly, I take out as many of the pins as I can. These, I think they're called magic pins. I'm not sure. I'm going to give you a link to them because they are absolutely wonderful. Okay, and like I said, a little bit goes against the grain because the needle is not in the middle. But you do get used to it, and then when you go back to doing it in the middle, it's really quick. I've been going from back to forwards using both methods a while, and I'm doing fine with it. Pressing it, and I'm going to press the seam open. Okay, and before that, I'm going to make sure it works. So you're going to see me laying it out, and here it is. Is it a little big? I think it's fine. Nope, it's fine. Okay, so there you go. I'm just going to finish that right. now, and the last part is me doing this open, and I might just go like that. Okay, doesn't really matter. See if it's a little big. No, it's fine. Okay, so there we go. We begin. Now I'm getting it ready to put in the final stitches. I'm just going to iron it lightly. I find it's easier to work with when I do this. It's easier to keep it flat, so when I'm sewing it by machine afterwards or by hand, but especially by hand, it's easier to work with. The iron that you're looking at happens to be a Panasonic wireless iron. I take out the water supply, even though it has very little leakage. I make it a habit that way I don't have to worry about it at all when I don't want the water. I find that's very easy to work with. I'll show you what it looks like with the tank on there in just a little bit. I really enjoy using it. And if you can see, let me get the water tank for you. There it goes. It just clips in, and I don't even have to take it out right now. It's empty, but I do it out of habit. I also take it when I'm doing this, I take it and I do a few little tugs in order to make it lay flat. I don't tug it too much. You have to know you don't want it to distort itself. You want to do it the right amounts, just so it makes it easier to do. Okay, so we finished with a part A of applying the binding. It does make rather too long of a video, and I wanted to separate it. So what you should have so far, I know this is a different piece, is something that looks like this, right? That's what you should have so far. And of course, it's waiting to be finished. That's what you've got. You're just waiting to have it finished. Okay, so subscribe so you'll get the next part, so you can finish it off. Like it if you like it, of course, and don't be afraid to ask questions. I'll try to get back to everybody. All right, see you. Bye.